All right. All right. And if you could, folks that are on phones, if you could just mute your lines so we don't hear the people behind you, that would be great. All right, welcome to the WMGLD Board of Commissioners meeting for July 13th, 2022. It's 6:30 p.m. So I'll be calling the meeting to order. And just a reminder that this meeting is being recorded. First agenda item is opening remarks. Chair's remarks. I don't have any remarks this evening. Do any other commissioners have remarks or reports to give?
Yeah, I do, very briefly.
Go ahead.
I just want to mention that last week I had a nice meeting with Dave and Pete and Mohammed and Kathleen from Voltrek. And this was on the subject of how multifamilies such as mine, mid-sized multifamilies, you know, like anywhere from like 2 to 8 units somewhere in that area, are going to be able to accommodate electric vehicles in the future. It's a heck of a lot more complicated than if you're in a single family home and you can just put the charger, you know, a very simple basic charger inside your garage where you park, where it's protected, where no one from the outside can come in and use it. We have a lot of additional concerns, such as how you determine which meter goes to which unit, how they're going to be metered, whether they'll be metered through the unit itself or whether there'll be a master meter, and questions about how we get access to grants to be able to install these, because in many cases, there's going to be an awful lot of infrastructure upgrades necessary. And in the case of my property, we're going to have to probably dig trenches across the parking lot and then have to repave sections of the parking lot. And then we, you know, each condo association or landlord would have to determine who's going to pay for all this, whether it's individual unit owners or whether it'll be paid for through the condo association or through a tenant's rent. And then more importantly, how the light department can help to advise people and guide them on how to achieve all of this, similar to how they advise residential customers on how you would put solar on your roof and that kind of thing. So it was an interesting meeting. It lasted over an hour, almost an hour and a half, I think. And so there's quite a lot of thought that all of these homeowners are going to have to put into this. And, you know, speaking with Dave and Pete, I agree with them that we really are going to need some sort of a information session for people who manage multi-unit properties. And Pete and Dave were saying maybe we can try to have something like that in the fall, like September or October. Since the board doesn't have a meeting in August, I would prefer that that session would happen probably in October. That way we can, as a board, discuss it at the September meeting. And also, if it were done in September, that's really right after the end of summer, when people are probably busy worrying about, you know, getting kids back in school and everything else. So I would rather see it happen in October. But at least I know that the light department management is thinking about this and recognizing that it is going to be a job that they're going to have to be able to perform in terms of, as I say, advising and guiding ratepayers. And so I guess more on that, hopefully next month. I'm sorry, not in August, but at our September meeting.
Okay, great. We can definitely add that to the agenda for September then.
Super.
And I also saw that it looks like we have Voltrek on board as in an advisory service capacity or something like that. That seems like a new development, as you mentioned.
Yeah, we have them in a similar role to the abode for heat pumps and for we also have a solar consultant we've been using. So we've added some consulting capability to help people with different projects.
Mhm. Okay, great. Thank you for that, Jack.
Yeah, thanks, Jack. That's great sharing of knowledge and interesting and some of the challenges around there. Jen, I have an
Yep.
update. Oh, go ahead.
Nope, I'm fine.
Just wanted to thank Gas and Light once again for the additional power that was provided to the farmers market. I actually went on the first farmers market of the season and chatted with them, and they were super excited. And the power has really allowed them to expand to more vendors that have an electrical requirements. So there's some new and exciting vendors potentially coming. One of them excites me, a pot sticker vendor. So, and that's all made possible by the additional power. So thank you for that. This might be a question for Mark. I was talking to some folks here in town, and someone who had moved in from a different territory that was covered by National Grid, and they liked the feature on their National Grid bill that showed a comparison of their utilization, across their neighborhood. So, obviously this is anonymized and aggregated. And I was wondering if it was something that we could do. So I have no idea if that's possible with our billing system, or if it's something that we could look at to include, or even if there's a way to potentially, with the billing website revamp, something that someone could log into and see when they look at their bill online.
Yeah, I've seen that comparison before. I think what you're speaking of is, I know that in IOU territory, National Grid namely, I've seen it, and it says that, how you compare it, how you stack up against your neighbors. So we could look into that. The one caution I would throw out is that when you're kind of doing a comparative against, your neighbors, for example, in my neighborhood, I mean, I have a smaller house among bigger houses. So, the guy 2 houses down in a 10-room colonial is going to be comparing his usage against mine, and it's not a comparison. And what's going to happen is Sylvia's going to get the phone calls. Why is my bill so high in comparison to Mark's? So that's that's kind of so there's a benefit to having the more information, Tom, comparison to neighbors, but it's also the unintended consequence of having to kind of chase that down. So we need to kind of balance that. But first step is we can talk to Jeff, and Jeff is doing when, Pete? September, October? When is he doing?
Early October, yeah.
October.
But in the meantime, we're trying to improve our website capabilities. The bill format is kind of restrictive, so adding like big real estate to the bill is kind of hard.
Yeah.
But if we do improve it might be like a website option. That might be something that, if you log into your account, it might be something you could see if you're looking at it from the website.
Yeah. The one that comes out from National Grid is actually, it's not even in the bill. It's a separate mailer.
Gotcha.
So it's got nothing. It's not on the bill. It's a separate. It comes in a separate envelope, separate postage, the whole 9 yards. So.
Yeah, I can appreciate. Obviously, everyone uses energy a little bit differently. And certainly the footprint of the home or building certainly impacts that, right? So, and I know that and maybe this is where we kind of focus on Sense. I know within like my Sense app, it actually does the comparison because I input like, here's a square footage of my home, how many people live here. It then breaks that out and says, all right, here is the comparison in your town where we have that data, Massachusetts, and then for the country, and comparing, my square footage to the number of people that live, and so it's a little bit more targeted in that aspect.
Yeah.
It was just an interesting comment that was made to me, and the person was like, this made me think and made me ask questions, which is kind of the idea behind it, right, is why am I using more, and what can I do? But to your point, it could facilitate some unnecessary back office phone calls.
We can run it, we can certainly run it by Jeff and see what.
Appreciate that, but thank you. That was all I had, Jen.
Okay, any other comments? Or commissioner reports? Okay, I'm hearing none. Town council liaison comments. The town council liaison is not on tonight. And in terms of public comments, I don't see anyone from the public on at this time. Moving on to the meeting minutes from the June 1st meeting. Did everyone have a chance to review? Provide comments?
Yep. I had no comments.
I had no comments.
I have no comments.
None
None
from me.
here. Sylvia, excellent job.
Thank you.
Awesome.
All right, I'll make the motion to approve the June 1st meetings as presented.
Second that.
Okay. We'll take a vote. Commissioner Betcher,
Aye.
Commissioner Corsi,
Aye.
Commissioner Calais, aye. Commissioner Prifty.
Aye.
And Commissioner Warshall.
Aye.
Okay, the motion is approved unanimously, 5-0. Okay, moving on to old business, project updates. The first one is, looks like a presentation on the Northeast Tech Wakefield High School Energy Park project.
Phil, did you want to make a motion to take the contract out of order?
Yeah, if we could do that, please. I'm on vacation out of state here, and I've got a family gathering. So if we could move that, I would appreciate it. So I'd like to make a motion to move out of order, to move up the general manager's contract discussion.
Okay, any comments on that request or discussion? Okay, I'm not hearing any. Do we need to take a vote on that motion?
If it's a motion, you usually have to take a vote, but that's fine.
All right, well, let's just.
I'll second the motion.
Okay.
Perfect.
Sorry.
Commissioner Betcher,
Aye.
Commissioner Corsi,
Aye.
Commissioner Calais, aye. Commissioner Prifty,
Aye.
and Commissioner Warshall.
Aye.
Okay, let's go to the general manager's contract.
Right. There's actually going to be 3 parts to this discussion: the contract itself, the general manager's raise for 2022, and then a policy that I'm recommending that would protect non-represented and anybody that doesn't have a contract, i.e. Mark and Dave. And so we'll discuss those in 3 parts. Do you want me to start with the contract?
Actually, it might make a little more sense if we start with 2022 raise, since the contract builds upon it.
Okay. So Jen and Phil and I met, and based on the discussion that we had of where we were on relative to the market and relative to the union and employee association and supervisory association agreements, we discussed a 5.25% raise for 2022, retroactive back to January 1st. If you'll remember, what we decided, since we were in contract negotiations, to put off my raise and ultimately Dave and Mark's also until after the association agreements had been reached, and then we agreed to wait till now. Does anybody have any questions about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the other thing that we should note is that that is roughly in line with the raises for other positions. So it's based on and in alignment with some of the other raises that we provided as well in the 2022 year.
Correct. So that would have to be, that's the first of potentially 3 votes.
All right, should I make a motion to approve the 5.25 increase for the 2022 contract?
I'll second that.
Okay. Commissioner Betcher,
Aye.
Commissioner Corsi,
Aye.
Commissioner Calais, aye. Commissioner Prifty,
Aye.
and Commissioner Warshall.
Aye.
Okay, the motion was approved unanimously 5-0.
Thank you. Do you want me to go to the contract next?
Yes, please.
Okay. All right, so Phil, Jen, and I sat down and discussed some changes. Not a lot of it is huge. I'll go, so I put a finished version of the contract in your board book, but I also sent you the contract itself electronically so that you could see the changes, but I'll just review the changes as we go through it if you want. There is no changes to Article 1 or Article 2. For Article 3, we're proposing a 5-year term beginning January 1st of 2023. So the raise that you just voted takes care of the rest of 22, and I'm also under contract for 22 already. So this would actually take effect on January 1st of 23, and the term would be for 5 years, so it would run through the end of 27. The second item, which actually changes several times throughout the rest of this, is moving the date to review and agree on goals and objectives to March 15th. The rationale behind this is that we really can't attack it in January because we haven't even really finished any kind of numbers for the prior year, because we, by way of background, we didn't always have a regular meeting schedule. So it varied when we were going to meet. For the past several years, we've had a regular meeting schedule where we meet on the first Wednesday of the month, which is great, and it makes for consistency, but it doesn't allow us to have real numbers for January because we're usually meeting on or about the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, whatever. So we needed to change that date to a minimum of February, but in some years, depending on what's going on, it might stretch out to March. So changing that date that those things have to be resolved by covers the January, February, and March meetings before we have to have it contractually put to bed. So it's really just a date change that would be consistent with how we've operated. So and that date change is referred to several times in Article 4. So that's the rationale behind it, is that it would basically give us 3 full meetings to resolve that. And obviously, the goal is probably to have it done by the February meeting, but if necessary, like including this year, we didn't get it done till the March meeting. So it does give us a little bit of flexibility. Are there any questions on that? The next item would be the salary for January 1st of the beginning of the contract. And the salary that is proposed is a 2.75% raise over the one that was just approved. Therefore, it's consistent with what the associations are getting, or what one of the associations is getting. So that's the rationale behind that number. I don't know if there's, and then the next item in Article 4 is the longevity payment. The longevity payment had 2 provisions in the past, and we're currently under the 2nd provision, which is $10,000. You have to complete the entire year to achieve that. And so we discussed making the 10,000 the permanent number. Later in that article, March 15th is referred to again. Going to Article 5, the proposal is for 5 weeks vacation, up from 4 weeks. I've been on board for over 15 years, so I was requesting an additional week. Section 5.2, we agreed with both associations to lower the sick time buyback from 33 and 38% down to 25. And I think it's important that my contract's consistent with that. So my sick time buyback calculation would be reduced to 25% or 1/4 also. And I don't know if there was anything else. Other than the date at the end. Oh, there was a section of there was an appendix to the contract that had very generic goals and objectives. And we basically have removed that because we have a much more detailed goal and objective process and sheet that we use. So we've actually added to the categories with it in the current format. And I think the current way we do it is much more valuable than this very generic set of goals and objectives that were part of the old contracts appendix. So I recommended that we remove that and just go with the goals and objectives that we currently have. And those are.
Can we back up to Article? Can we back up to Article 6 for a second?
Yeah.
I just had a question about, I know that in the 2014 to 16 contract, Pete, we had a notice provision for termination by you or by us of, I think at the time it was like 90 days. And back in the 2014 and 16 contract, you had proposed that the board would give you 180 days and you would give us 120 days. And I was pretty certain that we changed it so it was 180 days apiece. But I see in this contract, it's back down to, it's still at 180 days notice by the board if we were going to terminate without cause, and you only give us 120 days. So I'm just wondering, is that a change? And the reason I ask is because, well, twofold, because I don't have the actual contract from 17 on. And secondly, when I looked at the copy of this contract that you emailed us, I didn't see the edits. I know you said that you would send us a copy by email that showed all the changes, but I didn't see any changes. I just saw a clean version.
If you use the review function, I think you can show with edits, but either way, I'm not sure where the 120 is.
It's in 6.2.
I had just copied this over from the last version that I had, so.
So that's not a change from the last contract?
No.
All right, that was my only question.
Jack, if you just so you can see, if you download and open up in Word and go to the review tab and just.
I don't have Word.
Okay, that may be why you're not seeing that. Let's try going to section 6 here. See.
Are there any other questions, I guess, on these updates? You know, I was saying to Pete that this is the first time a couple of us have been through this process. So I just wanted to give time for you, Tom, and Elton, and others who are newer to review all the terms and understand kind of what the key provisions are.
The only question would be what Jack brought up, right? Whether we want to leave the 120 days notice or change it to 180 to match section was it 6-1C?
I'm not opposed to it if it's a big deal. It's gonna be 4 months to 6 months, so if it's a sticking point, it's not a big deal.
Jack, can you give some history on or what you recall the 120?
Yeah, but
180?
in Pete's original contract, it was 30 days apiece, which
Okay.
really is inadequate because,
Yep.
you know, it took several months for us to hire Pete after Billy Wallace retired. And then at one point, I think it was when we went, I don't know if it was the 2000 and it must have been the 2011 contract, I think, when it went to 90 days. And then I guess it went to, I thought it went to 180 for both of us, both parties with the 2014 contract. But if it then got changed down to 120, and that's the contract that was in place for the last, must be what, 5 or 6, or going on 6 years now, I guess, right?
Correct.
17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. Yeah, about 6 years. I don't know what you guys.
I don't have-
I don't know that it's yeah, I don't think it's a big deal. I think 120 days is probably enough time for us to replace Pete, but it probably is fine. I was just asking, how it changed or whether this was a change, but I'm not that concerned about it because I think we would easily find somebody within 4 months.
Not as good, but
Yeah, that's my feeling as well. And it would take us out of an extended lame duck situation, which I don't think is good for either party either. So I'm in favor of the 120.
Any other discussion?
I'm okay with leaving it or changing it.
If it has been like that for the last contract, I mean, let's keep it the way it is. I mean, 120 days, it's adequate enough, I think, for potential search. Not that you're going anywhere, Pete. So.
All right, so I'll make the motion then to approve the general manager's 2023 to 2027 contract as amended.
Do you have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Let's take the vote. Commissioner Betcher,
Aye.
Commissioner Corsi,
Aye.
Commissioner Calais, aye. Commissioner Prifty,
Aye.
Commissioner Warshall.
Aye.
The motion passes 5-0.
thank you. I will put a finished copy of this. I could start circulating around for signature, or if you want to do it at the front of the office and you can swing by. Jack, you know what I'll do is I'll leave it in, I know Phil's away. If I could leave it in your mailbox first, Jack, and then if you could just drop it back and then we can leave it at the counter, or I can drop it off at anybody else's after that. If that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna leave it at the counter for the others, I can swing by. My
Okay.
schedule has changed, so I'm not working nights anymore.
Okay. That's fine. All right, I'll leave it at the front counter and then when you get a chance, whoever can swing by and sign it. Thank you. And then the last item in this bucket was I included a proposed policy for basically non-represented employees. And what it's basically saying is that it would protect Mark and Dave because they're currently the only two folks that are not governed under a supervisory association contract, the employees association contract, or my contract. So what it does is it guarantees them the minimum benefits that are provided to the supervisory association. I'm thinking in terms of vacation time, sick time, all those things right now. you know, somebody, I mean, right now it's not an issue here, but if I were ever gone or if town hall ever questioned anything, they could ask, you know, well, there's nothing that governs what Dave and Mark get. And so we've traditionally treated it that way. However, it's not written down anywhere. So I feel a little uncomfortable that they're not protected in some way. And it started this year. One of the areas, obviously with the whole adjustment of sick time buyback, I wanted to make sure that there wouldn't be any question in terms of the adjustment to them and how theirs worked, because right now it's not really clearly written. So now by adopting this policy, they would be, at a minimum, have the same benefits as the supervisory association. So it would require a vote of the board to adopt the policy, but I think it's a valuable clarification. It's not very cumbersome. It's not long. It's just basically protects them a little bit by a vote of the board and something in writing.
Was this shared with us, Pete, or
Say that again?
was it shared with us?
I
I don't
think,
know.
what, did I have it in the board? I thought I had it in the board book.
Yeah, it's page 54.
Okay. Thank you.
So I have had personal experience with this type of exempt employee, and I think that this is a good type of policy. So I am in full support of putting something like this in place, because Pete, as you said, if you are no longer with us or something changes within town hall, this gives protection to the employees, to yourself, and then obviously the board. So I think that this is a very important thing to put in place.
Any other discussion or comments? Elton, I can give you a second to read it. It's not long.
No, I'm
Yes,
almost
you
done. Yeah. I'm
The
good
only
with it.
question, so would this be a standalone policy, or would this be incorporated into the larger document that we have over?
It would be added to the larger, because we have some labor specific policies around the corporation, and we have some more operational policies. This would be included within that handbook.
The handbook, yeah, that was the word I was trying to
Yeah,
look up.
yeah,
Thank
we
you.
would add this to that handbook as a company policy.
That seems reasonable to me. I'll make a motion then that we approve the exempt employee benefits policy that would be added to the employee handbook.
I'll second it.
Okay, Commissioner Betcher,
Aye.
Commissioner Corsi,
Aye.
Commissioner Calais, aye, Commissioner Prifty,
Aye.
and Commissioner Warshall.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank you all for accommodating me. I really appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you, Phil.
Thank you. No problem, Phil. Enjoy.
Enjoy your vacation.
Signing off. Thank you. Appreciate it.
So before we move on, I just wanted to get through the votes for Phil, but I did want to say that, one of the parts of our conversation with Pete was to say, before we go into contracting, do you like what you're doing? Do you, like your job? Do you want to stay here? How's it going? So I wanted to just give Pete the opportunity to reflect on that for the board's benefit. I mean, I think it was a good conversation, and in my workings with Pete, I think he's a good general manager, and I'm excited to keep him on for another 5 years. So, but just wanted to give him the opportunity to say words on his own to that effect.
Yeah, I truly appreciate that. And I appreciate the fact that as part of the discussion, we talked about, we had traditionally had 3-year agreements. And then with the last contract, there was some craziness, and it ended up getting 2 additional years added and some other provisions. So I think going into this you know, I definitely see myself here for the greater part of the rest of my career. So I think we're doing a lot of great things. I think we have a lot of great people, and it's a lot of fun. And I think, you know, we keep it focused on doing a lot of great things. And I think if we compare ourselves around, I think we're among the leaders in almost every category. And I think that's something to be proud of. And I think it's all due to the folks we have working here. And I think that, you know, I think I definitely enjoy coming to work every day, and despite what they might think. And I appreciate the support of the board for the 5-year term. And as Jen said, when we discussed it, I talked about I'm not saying I'm going to retire in 5 years, but I like the fact that there's a 5-year term, and I'll probably be around for a while longer after that. But at least I know I have a girl entering senior in high school, so I got at least 5 more years of bills ahead of me. So.
Awesome. Well, thank you for myself. You know, I truly appreciate the work that you and your staff does for the town and the utility and everything. You know, it certainly doesn't go unnoticed by myself, and you know, I think the greater community as well. So just, you know, it's just a reflection of all of your combined work under your leadership. So
I appreciate that. I mean, Wakefield's an incredible community, and the fact that, you know, if you look at I know the story I tell people is in the last recession in 2007, 8, and 9, the housing prices in Wakefield were one of the only communities in the state that didn't drop, you know, because people want to live in Wakefield, you know. So I think it shows what kind of community we are, and I think we're the right size, and we have the resources to do a lot of smart, innovative, and, you know, great things for utility. And I think that shows on both the gas and electric side. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Pete, for all the hard work, and I'm very glad to see us enter into this agreement for another 5 years. And when you're ready to downsize, I'm sure we have plenty in the housing stock.
I wouldn't mind going sooner than later, but we've already promised Caitlin she's gonna have a place to come home to when she's in college for a little while anyway.
Yeah, Pete, so congratulations on the 5-year contract, and looking forward to working with you at least for another 1.5 years in my term, and who knows, maybe future terms as well.
Hopefully, I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. So with that, should we move on to the energy park?
Yeah. I don't know if there's a lot of the other stuff is the boilerplate stuff that we include in each board book, but I'm glad Joe was able to join us, even though he's battling COVID from his super spreader vacation he went on. So by way of background, we've talked about it for a few months now. The proposed WMGLD Energy Park would be on Hemlock Road between the newly proposed Northeast Metro Tech and the current high school / potential future high school. What it would be is a microgrid that includes both 2 lines of supply from our normal distribution system. In addition, it would have a battery, a generator. It would connect solar from both roofs of both schools. And it would also have potential space for future distributed generation technologies. We would obviously factor that in as we build the park, and it would become an innovative, self-sustaining microgrid. And so Dave, Mark, and I have been on a ton of meetings. That this all started with the Metro Tech, originally proposing to want gas heat, and how could we innovatively encourage them to go all electric, and then also plan for the future for an all electric future high school, and try to do a lot of like I was mentioning before, a lot of exciting and innovative things in Wakefield. So with that, I'll turn it over to Vinny and Dave, and then if there's questions, I think the important thing to remember is that this is to provide a lot of information, but there's still a tremendous amount of unknowns and there's a lot of work to still do. This is a very, very big project, and we're marching along the road, but we might not have answers to every question tonight, but at least it gives you some information about the thinking, the rationale, and where we're at.
So thanks, Pete. So the Energy Park project, as Pete said, it's really an exciting project for everyone. It's innovative. Talked to some other folks, and they have basically said the same thing, knowing what's going on in the utility industry. It's a modern microgrid is our plan. And the nice thing about it is we've, really introduced like Vinny and Joe into this from their areas of expertise. Vinny's been involved with the conceptual design and discussions, and Joe's working with Mark on the financial analysis component of it. So it's they've been both major contributors. So the Energy Park is a microgrid connected to the electric system, but it's really a true microgrid that will feed both Northeast Metro Tech and the high school. And as Pete mentioned, it's a lot of work to get the VOTEC to go all electric, but our proposal's been received very well. Any type of challenge we had, we were able to work through them with all the issues that they may have had, but they've been very supportive as well. So the projects are really moving forward so far on the VOTEC, and we've had preliminary discussions with the high school as well. So that both parties or both projects are open to this for sure. So I want to turn it over now to Vinny just to talk about some of the equipment we're installing and go into some detail.
Yeah, so as Dave and Pete mentioned, both schools are going to be all electric, and the Energy Park, we're planning on each school having a 250 kW solar array on it. And there'll be a 5 megawatt battery storage unit at the Energy Park itself, and a 3 megawatt gas generator. And there will also be extra space for something else in the future, maybe more batteries. But we're leaving extra space in the Energy Park for that. And the cool thing about this is the battery, with help from the generator and the solar, will serve as the emergency power source for both buildings. And this is a pretty big deal, actually. And it's I'll get into it in another slide a bit more, but basically the buildings won't need their own emergency power source. We're going to supply it. So we've discussed this with their electrical engineers and wiring inspector, and they've given us the okay on that. So why are we doing this? It promotes electrification, and it shows that it is possible to go to net zero 2050, that heat pumps work in New England in cold temperatures, and this will showcase that. The Metro Tech and the future high school will have their electric bills significantly reduced by having solar on their roof that we will own. And basically, since this will be a microgrid, they can even apply for a resiliency grant for being a shelter. And because if the grid goes down entirely, they will still be able to run both schools. It adds peak shaving ability for us, and it eliminates the need for diesel generators at both schools. So they will be replaced with just a small emergency transformer that will be fed from our Energy Park. And of course, the educational aspect of it is great. And being a tech school, we'll hopefully be able to be pretty involved with them and showing them how this works. So some of this is from the people designing the school. This is going to be a very efficient building. Without getting too much into the numbers, they're basically going overboard. more than the requirements have to be. So they're going to exceed Massachusetts energy efficiency requirements by at least 20% in order to get this 2% additional MSB reimbursement. They're going to use heat pumps for heating and cooling, LED lights, the best insulation available, advanced electric and water metering, all sorts of stuff that it's basically going to be as state of the art as possible. And like some other buildings that may say they're going to be solar ready or EV charger ready, but there's no obligation to do it. In this case, we're actually making that happen. There's a whole lot of players in this project. We've got the schools, the Metro Tech team, who we've been talking to a lot, their design and engineering team, the superintendent of schools. They've got a subcommittee, the project manager, and we've been talking with town departments quite a bit about this as well. We've briefly talked to the Wakefield High School as well. They're still in the very early stages though. And obviously the state and the people of this town and other towns, because the tech represents other towns as well. So everyone will be a stakeholder in this project. So we plan on educating people on this. There will be questions on it, and it's kind of a win-win for everybody. So it's good to educate people on it. We'll show them, how this will benefit the community, and we'll educate legislators and regulators on it as well. And I think this can kind of serve as I don't know how to put it, but an example of what can be done in the state in other situations. So we plan on publicizing this project and with info sessions, flyers, and you name it. Obviously, keeping the board well informed. Let's see.
Andy, can you talk a little bit about on the communications and education plan, the timing for some of these meetings or educational efforts?
Yeah, I don't think we're quite there yet. We're still in the early design phase. We have a general design, but I don't think we're quite there yet. But
one of the next big steps, and Mike McCarthy's laying out for us the action plan for getting the easement for the land, which is our next big step. We've met with the town, we've met with the building department, and we need to go through getting an easement for the location. So Mike's laying out that calendar, and as part of that calendar, that's obviously going to require a lot of education of the public. It is going to require a town meeting vote for that easement. So Mike is laying out the calendar for that, and then we'll begin to do the education process as part of that.
Can you just go back to the other slide real quick, and then just on with the state legislators, I think that's important, and we should probably do that sooner than later. Especially with the legislators that represent Wakefield's, both Kate and Jason. Jason is the chair of the education subcommittee. I think educating them and having them be advocates for us, having them, potentially set aside state money, helping with, locating where in the budgets, the resiliency can come from. With Kate also being on telecommunications, utilities, and energy, I think she can help out as well. So having them advocate, tout this, say, look at this exciting thing that's happening in Wakefield, the microgrid, giving them something to latch onto, and help us out with that, I think was extremely valuable as well.
So I've already had preliminary discussions with all three actually, Kate, Donald, and Jason. We've had a preliminary discussion on it, and once we get this calendar set up for what we need to do to procure the land, I'll make sure I read them in. One of the issues we're facing on the regulatory side is the DOER is kind of in that limbo lame duck mode, and not a lot moving forward super fast. I I've had a preliminary discussion with the current DOER, but I don't think a lot's gonna happen in terms of getting their support other than, wow, this sounds like a great idea. But other than that, we're not gonna get a lot of concrete out of them until the changes in January. And then we'll have to start building that relationship with that side at that point.
Pete, who are you talking to at DOER?
We've met with Patrick and
Joanne?
Huh?
Joanne?
I haven't talked to Joanne now.
Okay.
But I think there's gonna be some changes there, obviously, coming up in January, so. But again, as a concept, and I don't see this part changing, that they're gonna be very supportive of the idea and the concept, so I think, just continuing on that relationship going forward. I think, I'm not sure what staff's gonna look like in 6 months, but we're looking forward to continuing to educate them and share with them.
Is it outside of the, Department of Energy, do you see, what are some of the potential major hurdles that, could be stumbling blocks for something like this?
We have that on our next slide, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll skip ahead to that one real quick and I'll go back to the other two. Yeah, so there are a few concerns. Town meeting November, like Pete mentioned, that's to approve the lease on the land, the easement, I mean. There's some kinds of our land conservation and vegetation management, just to make sure we're, a good steward of the land. And we have to talk to the state about a grant of location on the road for conduit, because that is a state-owned road. Shouldn't be.
Yeah, one of the other issues with Hemlock Road is that as part of the discussion for the new high school, they're also talking about changing the configuration and direction of that road a little bit. So we're gonna have, that's gonna be, it's not an insurmountable issue, but it is an issue as to how our main feed coming off of Farm Street going up there might have to start in one direction and be relocated to a different direction once the high school goes. So that's just a logistical thing that we're gonna have to be aware of at the start, so.
Yep, and I'll go over that more in a second. And lead times, I mean, I'm sure you know that lead times are crazy for pretty much everything right now. But it looks like a year to year and a half for some of these big items, which really isn't that bad considering the length of this project anyways. And so here's a view of kind of what the finished product would look like. This will be done in phases though, so basically the whole right side of the screen is what we'll be doing first for the new Northeast Metro Tech. And the left side over by the high school right now, it's an overhead feed, and we'll probably leave it that way for now until the high school project kind of drives what we do on that side. And in the bottom left, you see the plan for the energy park. We've got generator and the double battery setup, and then we have a whole other area for something else to go in the future. So
one of the things we talked about is not developing or clearing trees on that site right away, making sure we have proper clearances so that it doesn't provide a risk to us, but leave as much vegetation there as we can until there is a plan for future use of that portion of it. But we still want to procure the easement for the whole site so that we don't have to go through many processes once, somewhere down the road, if we decide we want additional batteries, flywheels, some future technology, when we get to that point, we want to add it to the park, that it doesn't involve the extra step of procuring the easement.
So that's a 30,000 square foot parcel of land for the energy park. So we'll propose to the town for a larger area, but just keep the development to this site, and that'll give us some flexibility. But we plan on petitioning the town for an easement for possibly an acre.
Who's gonna own the equipment, like the battery, the solar, the generator, any type of control system? Is that going to be owned from WMG or the schools?
We would The MLD would own the solar and we would own all the equipment in the yard. However, we'll talk about it a little bit more in detail in the pro forma section. But there's possibilities for a lot of different lease to own arrangements for both the solar, the batteries. But ultimately it wouldn't be the schools that we would own and maintain all of that.
And that would give us the flexibility to potentially operate the battery as a peak shaver in the
Correct.
summertime,
Yes.
especially if the schools are not in session, so there would be low demand from them.
Yep.
Yeah, not only that, but the solar off both roofs when there's a period of low time would flow back to the system.
And are we setting this up to a point where the battery could operate unconstrained? Meaning if the schools are at peak capacity, the battery could either charge or discharge without any constraints?
Yeah, it would still be tied to, to the bus. In other words, if we had like a double peak day, that type of thing.
No, meaning if the battery, let's say, was utilized during the night or the day before, and we're charging it during a peak day where the schools are also using full maximum load, would the distribution system be capable of supplying that type of demand?
Absolutely, yeah. And that's very similar to our current battery right now.
And I know it's probably too preliminary, but is any of this triggering any system upgrades at the station or the distribution line system, or?
No, it's pretty close to BB substation as it is. So we're just gonna end up rearranging some of the circuits we already have to try to more evenly distribute all the load on them. And this will basically be a dedicated feed from BB practically.
Dedicated feed for BB, and we have a dedicated circuit that goes down Montrose from Wallace Station that would be expanded over to provide the other side feed. So in terms of reliability, this would be among the most premium locations, probably not only in Wakefield, but in New England. Because you're gonna have two distribution circuit feeds from two separate substations fed by different transmission lines.
Four different transmission lines, right?
Yeah. So
We better be careful. Someone's gonna want to put a data center here.
yeah,
Well, it wouldn't be a bad spot for it.
that's for sure.
But the system upgrades, Elton, would be minimal. I mean, we put some switches in, switches that can be operated remotely from SCADA, not manually operated, so we could, respond quickly if we had to. So there's some system upgrades, but not significant.
Do we know what the load requirements for both schools? I mean, it's got to be preliminary type of.
Yeah, I mean,
request.
it's, they always heavily overestimate it. They're electrical engineers, but I mean, I can't really see either school being above 1500 kVA per school, but.
Okay.
And Jen, isn't the proposal from Green Communities that we saw in the high school, the new high school, what a 60% reduction in energy consumption from the school today?
Yes.
So,
Wow. Yeah, that's pretty significant.
I mean,
So-
to that point, I think there's two metrics that would be helpful to see at some point. One is we actually haven't seen the regional tech proportion of total community load number ever. And so I think it'd be good to see, like, what do these two buildings represent in terms of load in our community?
Let's see here.
I don't think it would be very significant. I mean,
Because
what Vinny pointed out earlier too, is that their current load and that the electrification piece of it was what it was an important factor about when they sized up their transformers. They looked at it as a significant change, driving a great deal of load, but they looked at it differently. So we think that on this sketch you see that it's dual 2000s, but we think it will be significantly lower than that. The key here is to monitor their load as well and really get an accurate measurement on what their load per square foot is going to be. They're saying they think it will be a little bit higher. We think it will be lower based on 80% reduction. and the efficiency of the buildings, you know, it won't be near that. So,
The one thing that's different, that, what Vinny, if we can do a simple calculation of what their current loads are, but we have to remember that the current Northeast Metro Tech is oil heated. So that's a factor that we don't have. You know, the high school is heated by mostly gas and with a little bit of oil, but the heating number, we don't have that number for the tech. But we will, you know, going forward, this is going to be all electric heated. So the load for Northeast Metro Tech will be much higher than the current load on the system from an electrical perspective, but from a total energy perspective, you know, it's going to be much more efficient than oil heat.
Yep. Yeah, and just to put it into perspective, the current school uses like 1 to 1.3% of the town's peak load. Just to give you an idea of where that's at.
Yep.
Would
And the new
would the 2000 kVA cover for even EV load? I mean, have they done any analysis as far as how many students or employees could potentially be charging their electric vehicles at any given point?
They haven't, but the two 2000s
Will be sufficient.
Yeah, I mean, you've got 4,000 kVA available. I mean, that's sizable. I think we'll be good there. If we have to, we can always add more in the future for EVs, but I think we're going to be putting in transformers plenty big enough.
On the peak load management, I just had one question. Can buildings today respond to peak events? In other words, do you go to, for example, the town administrator and say, hey, we're having a peak event, and if you reduce your load at these hours, you can save money?
We don't have a commercial load management program at this time.
Okay. And so, but presumably that is, so with us owning this system, we would effectively be providing that service, correct? Or capable of providing that service? Can you comment on the extent to which we could help these buildings with accessing those cost savings?
We'd have to develop the program before, so that's probably a long way down the road in terms of figuring out a commercial, you know, load management type program.
Okay.
It's kind of
But
hard to say.
They would still be like using an energy management system on their own and operating their buildings, and we would need to essentially request that they operate a different, you know, different way or at a lower level.
That's typically how a larger commercial participates in load management. Yeah.
Okay.
Is it a good assumption or not that these two buildings, when, you know, the new buildings will be capable of interfacing with the, you know, commercial load management system if we put one in place?
I would assume that most of the current technology is, you know, able to act in that way. I mean, 30 years ago, there was technology that you could create a load management program for your building system. So I'm assuming in most cases that's come like tenfold since even those days.
Given that
Back when I was Vinny and Joe's age and I ran the load management cooperative for Boston Edison, I could do it then. So I'm assuming I can do it now.
A long time ago.
But given that,
Be careful how long ago you say.
Given that these are schools, I mean, their demand during a peak day, at least for the foreseeable future, unless we switch over to winter peaking, most of their load is shut off or is at a minimum during the peak summer days because they're not operating. So.
Yeah.
And even the way our system works today, it's also kind of at the lower end because we peak, you know, between 5 and 7 o'clock now. So
right,
they wouldn't be a huge player in the load management bucket. The benefit we are getting from the structure we proposed is that we will get the excess solar, especially in the summer months when they're truly not using that much. So.
Yeah, I mean, this building's very likely to be a winter peaking building. Very likely.
Yeah, no, that's true. I just, I'm not sure the extent to which these buildings are shut down over the summer. And I wonder if they could be more attentive to that, right, with some additional conversation.
I'm sure they could.
Yeah.
Elton, have you been doing any work for all electric schools in the area?
No, we haven't. We haven't had any requests. I know the only one that we're looking into, like an all-electric, has been a bus EV charging depot
Okay.
in
Oh, yeah.
Quincy with MBTA, but that's the only thing.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
So move on to the schedule. If anyone's got more questions on this. So this is going to be a pretty long-term project. We've already begun the engineering end of it. And next year we'll start the site work and order all these long lead time items, which will hopefully come in 2024, probably by the end. And we'll also be starting our SCADA and the microgrid work, which will be contracted out most likely. And by 2025, the school wants to open for fall 2025. So we'll be testing in the spring. It'll give us some time to iron things out before they open. And then we'll do the solar work after the school's operational. And Wakefield High School says they will be starting in 2027. So we'll see, but that's still a while away. And we went over that, and I think Dave will take it from here.
Okay. So Elton, kind of what you asked earlier, who owns what equipment and who's responsible for what? So one of the items is the battery. So the MWEC is working with the municipals to represent them to go out to bid on a project for battery installation. So they're in the steps now and going down, narrowing down the field of players who will be able to participate with us. But right now we have a number of a few companies that are interested in offering battery storage technology. So we can go to the next slide, Vin. So the options for it would be fixed capacity or owned and maintained by the municipal or shared savings. So they looked at both options and reviewed it with us, and the shared savings one is definitely something that we're interested in. And then in that case, we would not own the asset, but we would share the savings with them. So it would be lower cost for us, and they would be responsible to manage that asset. The steps in the contract or long-term contract is that we're actually very interested because we're ready to get more detail from them. So they've met with us to see if we're interested, which we are. And then we have a site meeting, even though it's a greenfield, we have a site meeting with them on the 26th of this month to go over the location. They're going around to talk to all the different municipals that are interested and review the sites. And then they'll create a final offer sometime mid-August, and hopefully something will be in place by September, which is, if all goes well for us, would line up with our plans as well, knowing what direction we're going in terms of ownership or shared savings. But the shared savings one looks like that might be the most beneficial compared to the ownership.
As of right now, yeah. So that's, again, we talked about it probably a couple of months ago, that there were several municipals that are interested in doing batteries in the region. And we took that as an opportunity to go out to bid. They actually have 3 bidders right now, and those bidders are offering either a shared savings type model or just they'll sell you the battery. And we will still look at both those options as we go. But some of the preliminary numbers on the shared savings model look pretty good. So we would definitely, there's some benefits to that. But again, we're still very early in the due diligence on that. So we need to make sure that we're, it's the right business deal for us. But there's going to be that opportunity probably also with the solar. And so there's some ways to keep our overall capital costs down a little bit. as part of this project, and a shared savings model for the battery portion of it could be beneficial. We'll have to get into the the preliminary, and again, this is a very preliminary pro forma, but we'll have to get into that in executive session because there's a lot of proprietary numbers in there and guesses, and so we can't really talk about that in a public session at this point because it's way too early. But in general, there's two options, and we're going to closely evaluate both of them.
On the long term, and you may not know this, but on the long-term contracts, at the end of the contracts, will there be like dollar buyout for the equipment if we wanted to execute on something like that?
Potentially, yeah.
Okay.
There's also one of them I think offers changing out the batteries after 15 years, an option to extend. So there's a lot of there was I think 7 bidders. They've narrowed it down to 3 decent opportunities for players and that we're having conversations with right now. So the good news is there was a ton of interest on both the muni part and the supplier part. So hopefully, but as you can see, even just from this slide, there's a lot of moving parts. But we just wanted to kind of convey to you that there's, this is one piece of the energy park and it's very complicated, but there are some things that could help keep our costs down a little bit as part of this. So without putting a lot of capital out, we could, maybe we're not getting 100% return, but even getting a portion of the return might be worthwhile.
And this, I guess is speculative, does our thinking change from a long-term contract versus ownership if, say, grant money comes in, even say a grant for battery for resiliency? Does that change kind of the thinking, or we just still go with a long-term type contract with
it depends. I don't know if those timings will sync up. It's probably going to take much longer to know whether we would get any additional money from the resiliency initially. So we might have to enter in an agreement like this sooner than we would know whether we could get resiliency money.
Okay.
And the other is that we have a lot of other equipment that has capital costs that we would have to pay for ourselves.
Sure.
So yeah. So, and if we did get funding, that funding would offset the capital costs that we're spending.
Yeah.
For those pieces of equipment, the site work, foundations, all that.
Yeah, the switch gear itself.
Yeah, switch gear, yep, all that. Cable, everything. Yeah. SCADA system.
So I hope this presentation has given you a little bit of insight as to the project itself. Again, I don't think we have the answer, Stephen, probably a fraction of the long-term questions, but I think we've tried to highlight like the thinking of the project at this point. And it's very exciting. There's a lot of us involved in it, and there's a lot left to do. And it's going to be consuming a great amount of time for a lot of people for the next several years. But I think it's a great project, and I think it's a great opportunity for both the communities and the ultimately the utilities.
One last geeky question from me. Are they designing the building to meet like a 0-degree day, meaning most of the heat will be resistive heat rather than coming from the heat pumps?
I'm not sure.
No, I think they're designing more for the higher efficiency heat pumps. I think it's minimal resistive heat. I think it's mostly the heat pumps.
Okay.
But there's a meeting next week with a group that did an all-electric school in Cambridge and discussing with the Wakefield High School side. So we'll be learning more about the pros and cons of the all-electric design as well. So, and I'm sure the tech design team is looking at similar things. So
we can also ask a question, Elton, too, if they've explored the resistive heat part of it. If they're thinking.
Yeah, just curious, because I'm working with our gas side of the business, and they telling us the average household of a 1,500 square foot home will require 38 kW for heating, which is astronomical. I mean, if you think about it, you got to put a 50 kVA can in front of every house. I'm just trying to gauge what others are using for study purposes.
Yeah.
Interesting that
Seems kind of like a lot to me.
Seems,
But
it seems a little crazy if you ask me too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does.
Elton, I
Yeah.
can tell you that I've got a 1,500 square foot house that is air source heat pump, 100% no resistive heating, and it's, you know, we've hit those 0 degree days. So
I have a fairly good size house with all resistive heat, and I do not have a dedicated transformer.
yeah, I'll say that too. My house is not very big, but I got all electric baseboard heat too, and I've got a 25 kVA transformer outside feeding me and all the neighbors I can see.
With the neighbors, yeah. Yeah.
So I mean, I don't know,
but
from what
you're
I've
attacking on the gas folks side.
Maybe these are houses without windows or walls.
Well, I know Vinny's house definitely had to been about 48 degrees this winter. 'Cause
I
he's
know.
keep the
He likes it warm.
roof.
Yeah, well, now it's really hard because
Here's
my
one of the
central
things.
AC stopped working.
Ooh,
But yeah, I mean, for as far as electric versus gas load goes, I mean, just as a rough estimate, I see that usually all electric is around double the amount of load of a gas heated house, roughly.
Any other questions? We can go into, we shared the preliminary, and again, they're very preliminary pro formas in the package. We can go into executive session at the end if there's any questions about those. But we probably don't want to jump in and out of executive session. If you want to just keep going with the rest of the meeting, and then we could talk about that stuff at the end.
when will the pro formas be more finalized, or what's the trajectory for those?
Well, I think that's going to be continuously evolving, you know, this is based on the best information we have today. Once we finalize some of the stuff around the cost of batteries and we go out to bid for, the numbers will keep getting more solid as we go. We might not know solar numbers for the tech roof until a year and a half from now, you know. So it'll excuse me, it'll constantly evolve.
Can I ask a general question about revenue streams, or do we need to go to executive session for that?
You can ask a general question.
So what I see a lot in the microgrid world is revenue streams like Clean Peak, Connected Solutions, and Smart for solar. Is it our understanding that we would not be eligible for those?
Right, well,
given that
we're
an
not part of
MLP?
SMART, so we
Right.
can't do that. And we're not currently part of Clean Peak, so. Although there is some discussion potentially that we could be, especially with something like this for the microgrid, so. We'll just have to monitor that, but as of right now, that's IOU world, so.
Mhm. Okay. And then the only other thing I was gonna just say is that we are, we're eligible to submit MVP action plan grant requests. So we can look at MVP requirements to see if this microgrid could be part of that. I don't know if you've looked into municipal vulnerability preparedness grants as a potential source of funding.
Not yet.
Okay.
And then high level, you know, I know we chatted briefly about it, but the energy park, I'm assuming, is can be added to, upgraded, you know, for say, you know, if we wanted to include the Woodville school at some point. And
Yeah, I mean, so right now the Woodville doesn't have a generator, it has its own internal emergency system, basically battery lighting for, you know, exits and all that. So yeah, certainly we could look at what it would take to, the school itself would have to, you know, want to run conduit. I think a lot of it would probably wait to see exactly where the new high school would go and what, you know, once they're probably tearing down the old one, we could look at routing conduit over to tie in, you know, a supply to the Woodville from the park itself.
Okay, yeah, I didn't figure, out of the gate, I just, future, if it was,
It is gonna benefit to some extent, depending on like how we, again, if we hang the Woodville off of, especially, I think Jen had mentioned that there's some discussion of some green community stuff for the Woodville. If we need to change the supply from there, we would probably put it off the Wallace supply, which would be coming by there. And so depending on how we switch that, we could also improve the reliability, because ultimately that line would be tied to the BB line. So there's some opportunities to improve reliability to that based on where we hang some switches.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, anything else on this topic for now?
Well, thanks, Vinny and Dave, for keeping us up to date with all of this. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Of course.
Winter gas and electric supply. We got a note from Sprague last week saying that the numbers for this coming winter are still very high. We've hedged as much as we can hedge at this point. But we're also waiting for our allocation of capacity from the work we did last winter. That won't come till the end of August. So, but I just kind of want to put it in your radar screen that the numbers are still not great. And you're hearing that from National Grid and from everybody right now, that the supply numbers are more than double what they've been in the past for the forward market. So just to kind of keep it on your radar screen that the winter supply numbers are not great. So we will have a much better update on that in October. We'll include Mark on our agenda that month to give our annual Sprague winter gas forecast. But I just kind of want to put it on your radar screen that as of right now, those winter numbers look pretty bad. So
Any indication of what they're seeing, Pete, or no? Because I know.
yeah, well, I
telling-
mean, so we were at $9 last winter per deck, and we're there. That's like almost $20 right now. So we're hopeful that those numbers will come down a little bit, and we are hedged, to the extent that we can be. But the numbers are pretty crappy.
Yeah, they're telling us it could be upwards to 80% increase on the supply side.
Yeah.
More like
Again, that's
rate.
as of right now, but I think we're doing some important work in terms of the getting additional capacity allocated, so that part's going to help us. But by the other side, again, the commodity is going to be tentatively very expensive next winter, at least at this point.
Is any of this going to potentially trigger having to, use the LNG take again?
Yeah, it's less about the supply right now. It's more about the cost of the commodity.
Okay.
In other months in other years, we've had concerns based on the fact that we didn't have fixed capacity. Because of the work we did last winter, we're probably gonna have a greater allocation of capacity, which reduces our risk on that side. But the commodity itself, which was much cheaper 2 years ago, that's the driver of higher costs, not the allocation of capacity.
Gotcha.
Do we need to start doing any sort of communication to the customers in regards to the increased cost of the supply, at least earlier on? And I don't know if there's any opportunity to start doing any type of advertisement or at least outreach in regards to keep your thermostats a couple of degrees lower, or that type of
Yeah,
communication.
we did that last winter, and we talked about the supply cost increase, and we hopefully we can, we'll have better feel in the next, like in the September, October timeframe. We could really start warning people about the winter at that point.
How does this impact either customers currently on the billing program where divided up over 12 months, the fixed kind of billing, assuming that's going to go up on a per monthly basis. And then is that something we should also, to Elton's point, advertising to help say, hey, sign up now, kind of start a bank, I guess, in a way of kind of peanut butter spreading that, those couple of
The budget starts at the beginning of the year, so but for the end of this year, most people are in good shape by the September, October timeframe. So you could probably talk a little bit more about how the budgets are, but it's usually on a calendar year basis. We don't let people just jump.
Okay,
in.
so it's always on January 1. So
We basically take them off a budget bill. We start making calls like October, November, and we review the budgets at that time. So hopefully by that point, like Pete said, we'll have a better idea of costs. So we could go ahead and, make adjustments to their budget billing at that time.
For the next year.
For the
Yeah.
next year, we do have conversations with them in the fall.
And each one of them is handled individually. It's not, we don't group
Right.
batch per each one, because each individual account is different. So.
yeah, okay. Have we seen the budget billing help out folks, a lot more? Is that something that, knowing that we're going to have a much higher, gas cost next year to kind of, make it more widely known that there's budget billing and to help kind of spread that cost across the 12 months?
We do advertise the budget billing, and again, like Pete said, if we start getting a better idea of costs going into the fall, when we start educating the customers in regards to higher prices, we can also let them know at that time about budget billing too.
Yeah, I
You
would
just want to keep that on your radar screen.
I would definitely agree with some of the sentiment I'm hearing, that I think this year warrants earlier communication, given the magnitude that we're talking about.
Mhm.
And well, I do think the budget billing is helpful to I don't know what options would be good to pursue, but I would almost do it now, since we have this indication. I would do it early, and that allows people to make energy efficiency investments or other things, prior to October, where there's not really time to act. And the other thing is, we should be advertising this financing program, which really takes the upfront cost burden, away. And while that takes time to coordinate, giving them as much notice as possible will help, I think, to get folks started thinking about the winter, when they might have some time to do it, over the summer before school starts and whatnot. Is there a possibility of doing an article in the item, or I don't know, like announcement on social media or anything like that with some of this information to prompt people to think about this earlier than October?
Get Ann involved, Pete.
Yeah, we can. Yeah, we can definitely do a press release soon.
Yeah, and if it doesn't end up coming fully to fruition as badly as we think it might, that's a good thing. But I don't think it's going to be a loss for anyone if they've made those investments and are still going to be saving money.
Mhm.
Correct. Yeah, and to Jen's point, I think the sooner the better. Dealing with just an energy efficiency project at my mom's house, and the contractors are a month out just to come and see the site. Forget any lead times in getting any equipment and installed. So while it is July, it's it's a very short runway with some of the conditions out there.
Yeah, I think that's a good point that Jen makes, and maybe we can use the Facebook page too. I think that might reach more people sometimes than the press release. Otherwise, we can hope for a mild winter, but I don't see commodity prices coming down, especially because of what's going on in Europe right now. I think oil and gas are still going to stay way up there once we get closer to the fall.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to be in Europe right now.
No, I know. All right. Oh, so yeah, we'll definitely take that as an action to get a press release and communication going.
Yeah, let's definitely get an update at the September meeting on what commodity prices are looking like.
Yep.
Maybe even have putting the release out, have it, the town page, push it out as well. Maybe even to the town, everyone that's subscribed to the town notification as well. It's got a pretty big reach, I think.
Yeah, and I mean, this is a great opportunity again to promote the fact that I think a lot of people might feel like in this type of economy that these investments are out of reach for them. And so our financing program really does, I think, help people make these investments at times that are tight, like the ones we're in now.
Mhm. All right. Tom was going to share some comments on the energy code.
Just one quick thing on the project updates on just kind of just a commentary on the EV chargers. I know we're not quite there yet, and it's more around the fast chargers, but some of the stuff going on in the industry and with the IOUs and demand charges for the fast chargers, and I don't know, has our fast charger hit demand charges yet, or I'm thinking we're below that threshold?
We haven't moved it over to the power rate. It's stayed on the commercial rate.
Okay, so just something that some of the IOUs are doing, they're being flexible with demand charges, and just and that's great that we already are, so we're ahead of the curve. So just if there's more coming our way, especially from actual commercial versus the municipality putting them in, something to just kind of bear in mind. All right, let's see here. Can I share it? I can.
So I think the lead up to this, and Tom, you can jump in as well, is, the last time we talked a little bit about how some of the new building, provisions that we were considering whether, WMGLD could address. And we had kind of arrived at, well, what's going to happen with code? Will code effectively address some of the things for us, or will there be gaps and whatnot? And so Tom has really become, I think, one of the experts on what the upcoming codes will offer, or offer both. And so I asked him to just give a quick update on what he knows about that, so we can kind of learn more about what's already in the works, and then, again, like, keep considering what other options are on the table for Wakefield.
Absolutely. I don't know, I'd call myself an expert, but just kind of keeping my pulse on that. Can everyone see the DRE straw proposal in the screen share?
Yep.
Yep.
So just kind of preferencing what Jen had said, we have been looking at where efficiencies, retrofits, new building code, EV ready, PV ready, all of these things, and we all know that it is cheaper to do this at new construction, and to do it in code. We can do incentives and rebates all we want, which we should be doing, but the bulk of these things are going to come through new construction, and be forced with code. Even some of the discussions that we had last meeting around the gas moratorium, while we can say, hey, we're not going to supply more gas to a new building, that doesn't preclude someone from going propane or oil, whereas, and we have no say other than no gas, whereas in code, the code has these provisions built in through the building code. The Department of Energy, kind of where this came from is efficiencies should come first. You know, every unit of energy you don't use, we don't need to produce. And you know, this is not really sexy. You don't see efficiency. It's something you don't use anymore. So you know, it's a strange concept to folks. So it's, you know, nobody's going to go, wow, you've got really efficient windows and insulation and a, you know, efficient HVAC system. So it's just, you know, stuff, kind of a foreign concept to folks. This slide, I think, is actually very telling. The low hanging fruit really is in buildings and transportation. You know, the blue line is what we have been doing as for electricity and energy. You know, we've really been driving down the greenhouse gas emissions out of the system. And you can see, you know, there's still more work to do, but the low hanging fruit really is in transportation and buildings. So some of the goals here was for new buildings. And what was striking to me is that 1% of new square footage is in new buildings. So we're increasing 1% every year in new square footage. And then 27% of all square footage will be built after 2023. So 27% of all square footage in the state of Mass in 2050 will be built after 2023. So there's a lot of efficiency that we can start to drive out of the code set here. I'm not going to go through all the slides here. The Department of Energy does have all of this out on their website, and just kind of go through the parts that are important to us. And just they've extended, they just did redlining. This is now open through August 12th at 5 p.m. if you want to make comments on this. So feel free if there's any comments. It is open to the public through August 12th. So today, we as Wakefield have adopted the Green Communities. We have the stretch code. You know, as we know, in 2021, we passed the Climate Act in Mass. As part of that, the Department of Energy was tasked with creating a path for municipalities to meet the 2021 goals. So this is kind of where the stretch code, and there's a new opt-in code that gives us as a municipality the path to get to these goals that have been laid out in 2021 as part of that. Like I said, we have adopted this energy code. They are actually making changes to the base code and the stretch code. Those changes will automatically be incorporated by us because we have, you know, the base code and the stretch code here adopted in Mass as well. I'll go through here. So
I'm sorry. Can you just tell me what slides you?
Sorry, I'm on slide 10. I forgot you were. So.
Oh, okay.
Moved on to slide 10. I'll give you an update when we move on. So like I said, they're adopting the new base code, which is the IEC 2021 code. There is actually EV and PV ready within that base code. They are also making updates to the stretch code, which will also be incorporated by us as well. And then they have this new specialized opt-in code. This will be a section of code that we'll have to adopt at town meeting, like we did for the stretch code. And that's where a lot of the energy efficiency and the paths for the municipalities are laid out to meet the Climate Act of 2021. So it's very important that we as a town, you know, do adopt that specialized opt-in code. And if anyone has questions, feel free to jump in and ask along the way here. Moving on to slide 11, this is just kind of the timelines that they have laid out. They did a 2-year study around gathering analytics to achieve this the updates that they're making to the code. Jack, we're moving on to slide 14, skipping over 13. So for reference on this slide, as we all know, 10 therms equals about 1 month of water heating for the average home in Wakefield, or sorry, in the state of Mass. And this slide is very telling. So moving to electrification, the greenhouse gas emissions really get reduced here in Mass. And this is driven from the improvements that we've made to the grid and that we continue to make to the grid. And for Mass to make the Climate Act, the 2050 goals, it is absolutely critical that buildings move towards electrification, which, I think we've done a fantastic job with the VOC and our new high school. And this will help us achieve those goals within code. Let's see here. So new buildings, just for reference for those that don't know, are rated on a HERS index. Jack, we're on slide 16. HERS is a common metric for home energy rating system. Currently, the code requires 55. Average home in Mass is 51. And we will be requiring, actually, that's on another slide here. So for residential, moving on to slide 17, Jack. For residential, we will have basically 3 paths for a new construction. And this is kind of where it's important for us as a utility to kind of understand where these paths will be coming from. So if a home chooses fossil fuel, it doesn't matter what that fossil fuel is, that home will have to meet a HERS 42 at time of construction. If a home goes electrical heating, it needs to meet a HERS 45. And then passive home is essentially a net zero type of construction that is, it's a methodology of building, and it has gotten popular within Mass here. It's fairly popular over in Europe, but it is a way to construct a home with net zero. There is a transition year, which is, they're moving the fossil fuel to 52 and the electric to 55 in the January through December of 2023, before the 42 and 45 HERS rating kicks in with that. The HERS rating of 42, they're just explaining here that the cost benefits and the cost of installation between gas and electric basically kind of equaled out at 42. So that's kind of where those the 42 came from. All right. We can move on to slide. What are we moving to here? Sorry, just skipping around here to get through. Jack, we're going to move all the way down to slide number 25. So within the specialized code, if we opt in for this, there's essentially 3 paths for a residential or multifamily home to take. The HERS 45 path, which is the all-electric home, they must meet all the stretch code efficiency requirements, which they would already have to do. Path number 2 is if you go with a fossil fuel. I think this is just where we as a utility need to kind of be aware of. So if a home does go fossil fuel, they still need to meet all the energy stretch code that is in place. They need to place solar on the roof where it is feasible, and they need to make the whole home electrification ready. So that home needs to be pre-wired for cooking, dryers, water heating. So the panel wiring, all needs to be pre-wired for that home to be able to easily switch from a fossil fuel to electrification in the future. A passive home, by definition, doesn't actually use fossil fuel. So it is, would be electric heat or electrification ready as well when you are using that. If you do go with an all-electric home, that can either be an air source heat pump or a ground source heat pump as well. NPV is optional. As part of the base code and stretch code, these homes would be PV ready, so they would have the conduit, the size for the panel for PV, and for single family homes have to be EV ready for one spot. If it is a multi-family home, EV ready for 10% of all parking spots that are within there. Jack, that's on slide 26 there. With air source versus ground source versus natural gas. So natural gas, a heating system is capped at 98% efficient. You'll never get past 98% efficient, whereas a heat pump air source is 300% and a ground source is 400%. And just some details on the pre-wiring. The commercial stretch code basically follows the residential. There are some added things around building curtains, or what do they call them? Curtain walls as well. Improving what they found through their studies is improving the envelope and heat recovery. Adds cost, but they get to reduce the cost on the HVAC system in the installation. We can move past a lot of the commercial here as well.
So basically the overall construct is really not precluding fossil fuels, but it's making it essentially economically far more attractive for developers to go the electrification route.
Correct. Yep. That's essentially why the HERS rating, the 42, 45 is that you can go, but it is generally be more economical to, even with initial construction costs, to go electrification first. But you still have that option for fossil fuel.
Tom, will this apply to public buildings as well and schools?
Yes, when this gets adopted, this absolutely impacts public buildings as well. So you can actually see here the performance pathways, offices and schools. So I know that Wakefield's high school, that design team, the project manager is already looking, they're designing to the base code, the IEC 2021, because they know that this is coming. I would assume the VOC is as well. So this absolutely applies to public buildings as well.
And just quick clarification, is it apply to public buildings of a certain size, or
So,
like even if you were to build a tiny shed that's a public building, that would apply as well?
Correct. Yep. There's different classifications of the buildings based on square footage and size. I think it was in here somewhere. I don't remember where it was, but absolutely, the designation of the building, the size of the building, there are thresholds that need to be met within the code. And I found this slide fascinating. I actually skipped over it really quickly. It's Jack on slide 34, where the life cycle costs and the incremental cost to build and the greenhouse gas reductions that come along with it. We're not talking a large amount of cost to build. And even some cases where you're looking at large offices, moving, the code actually, if you follow the code, you actually are spending 4 4% less and getting 31, 33% greenhouse gas reduction. So it's just, it doesn't matter which way, which one of these you pick. We're seeing reductions in cost, and the biggest increase is in the small office building from a cost to build. So it's just, I don't know why a developer wouldn't go this way anyways, since it's the cost is incremental, or even can be less in some cases. And the only thing that was, or not only thing, but one interesting thing within here, they're adding in the new Appendix G. So this is slide 36. The new Appendix G has some additional commercial requirements around air tightness, ventilation, and buildings not required for TEDI. Also in Appendix G, there is additional requirements for EV ready and EV capable parking spaces in there that's they're putting in within Appendix G here in the different pathways. That was basically it in a nutshell on this, kind of the construction of passive homes here on slide 45. It is something that has taken off. There was 20 buildings in 2018 that were passive home, and now there are 6,500 units in the state of Mass already. Any questions or anything specific? So it's fairly dense. I didn't want to spend too much time going through it, but wanted to give everyone kind of an update of where this is at. This straw proposal should be finalized, and the base code and the stretch code ratified by December of this year. And after December, municipalities can start to opt in to the specialized opt-in code. So potentially, we could be voting on this as early as the spring town meeting to move forward in the specialized code.
Would we be required to move to the next one as part of green communities or not? Or...
Yes. So the way that the stretch code works is once you have the stretch code, any new updates to the stretch code, you are automatically moved into. So if you are a stretch code community, those new updates automatically start to apply when the new stretch code is ratified.
Adopted. Okay.
So, and I do believe that they have the same type of cutoff and grace period. So once it gets ratified, any new building permit pulled would need to come under that code. And they do have, like I said, within the stretch code, they have kind of the bridge year of 2023. So there's already language in the stretch code for the bridge year of 2023.
So what all this means to me is that perhaps WMGLD requirements don't need to be as robust as we might have thought, because the code will be taking care of a lot of it. So it might be like C requirements plus maybe a few extra little things, but if the panels are, and are already appropriately sized and a lot of the equipment is already appropriately sized, that we might not need to document as much of that ourselves. Is that your thinking, Pete, or what are you thinking about all this?
Was that for me?
Right. So does this change, I know.
I think this definitely moves in the right direction from us having to take restrictive votes and things like that. I think it gets, like I said, we've been seeing the lag on the school building code requirements, you know, so this definitely moves the bar relatively quickly, which is great. And as I said, you know, several times before, taking action at this level has a far greater impact than any small thing we could do at an incentive rebate level.
Yeah, I think that this, you know, obviously we can focus on more of the retrofits, the, you know, existing stock, right? But where, you know, new construction is happening, this is already kind of taken care of. And obviously I would think when an application for, say, a new multifamily home, you know, takes this, you know, particular path, and they're going to be, you know, already sizing the panel appropriately for the system. You know, even with solar, you know, we would just have the interconnect application for the solar. So we, you know, I think from a staffing level or whatever, there'll be more applications for that. But since this is new construction, you know, the way that our rebates and incentives are laid out, currently we're not incentivizing the new construction solar. So that would be kind of on the developer. So I don't see an impact necessarily to our rebate structure in that aspect.
Right.
It would be for the homes that are electrically ready and, you know, PV ready, that, you know, once the homeowner has that and they decide, you know, I want to put solar in, that might, you know, give us an uptick in that aspect.
Mhm.
I have one last question, which is just, do you see a role for WMGLD in kind of reviewing the electrical requirements and providing comment if they don't meet your expectations?
I mean, we will review it. I think, you know, there's many other players that are going to have a greater say in this. You know, obviously the larger IOUs, but I think we'll end up being on the same page as everybody. We're probably ahead of them. We're probably more ready for some of this stuff than the IOUs are. So.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think developer, you know, they're going to be familiar. It's a, you know, it's a prescriptive code. It's, you know, ubiquitous across the state, you know, for communities that have it. We won't be outliers. I think to, you know, where Jack's point was earlier, around it's complicated for multifamilies to add, you know, EV. We might have some guidance around, especially this is going to be greenfield new building, an easier time with those to, you know, these are going to be EV capable and EV ready. So, you know, I think we might want some policies around, you know, how would we like to see, you know, say a 2 to 10 building or 2 to 10 unit versus a, you know, 10 to, or 11 to 50 and, you know, 50 up units, how we'd like to see the EV, you know, metered, and, you know, what we would like to see from a policy perspective that's, you know, technically and, you know, billing wise.
Okay, awesome. Any other questions? Thank you so much for walking us through that. That was really helpful.
Thanks, Tom.
Welcome.
Thanks.
Okay, so I think we're on the last topic before we go into executive session if we need to, which is, you know, just a request to folks. We have a number of board meetings coming up. We have a loose schedule, but there's always, you know, we can always shift things around a little bit, and wanted to get a sense. Thank you, Jack, for providing an agenda item for September, but getting a sense from other people what their interest is in discussing this year, topics or ideas or anything like that at the various board meetings. And the other topic too to bring up is just, you know, strategic planning. We usually schedule something, you know, within the year. And so if there's interest in a specific topic that we want to make progress on, to kind of just have a discussion about when, and we might fit that in. So I just wanted to open up the floor to ideas for topics for the year.
I think the strategic planning session we had back in February, I think it was, or
It was
March?
the end of January.
End of January. Yeah. Time flies. I forgot whether we had any action items from it or whether we needed to revisit anything at a periodic time frame. So I'm not sure whether it makes sense a year from then, or like make that a yearly basis type review, or every biannual type review, knowing how quickly the landscape of our industry is changing, whether we're keeping up with everything, but that's the only thing that I can think of. Another one that comes to mind is inventory management and supply chain issues. I don't know if you've seen anything in your end, but I mean, we're talking to the wood pole suppliers now, and they're not able to meet our demands. I don't know if we have any concerns in regards to that. I mean, never mind pulse up transformers, and we saw it from Vinny's presentation, the lead time on pad mounted transformers, that it's going beyond the year.
Yeah, I'll have, so Sarah's coming up in either September or October as one of the presenters of the department specific ones, but we have developed some agreements with suppliers on both the gas and electric side to, they're gonna hold stock for us and only charge us when it's released to us. And so Tyler and Sarah have been working very hard on master lists of some supplies, because again, we're a small animal, and if we kind of focus on the items that the IOUs are buying regularly, they don't mind keeping extra around and only shipping and charging us when you know we need it. So there's some cooperative arrangements that are being put in place with those folks, Wesco and Irby and a few other things. So those are all good things, but you're absolutely right. The dates we're getting a lot of. Dave and Paul had a meeting this morning with the supplier for the new electric bucket that we're getting. It's a hybrid bucket that we're getting hopefully by the end of the year, which may stretch into early next year. But the next bucket that we want to order, if we want to order an all electric bucket for our second vehicle, it's more than 2 years out. So that's kind of the dates and numbers we're getting. So I was talking to Dave last week about the fact that we should probably order it now, because we're probably not going to see it till fiscal 25. You know, we're in fiscal 23 right now, and we're probably not going to see a truck we ordered today until fiscal 25.
I'm assuming they're only requiring a deposit if one. We're not paying till we get delivery.
No, not till we get delivery. Yeah.
Other things that come to mind, at least from my side, would be any type of coordination with other departments within the town and their plans on either electrifying their fleets or conversion to potential electric heat for their buildings. I don't know if DPW has any plans for there, and whether their facilities adequate enough to accommodate the conversions or not.
On the facility side of it, a lot of the green community stuff has led to a lot of those discussions. On the system side of it, we've been obviously worked very close with them on a bunch of stuff. On the gas side, the street paving stuff is fun. They were a little slow in getting up to speed now, but you can see obviously a lot of work going on in Wakefield and a lot of streets now, and they're starting to catch up and get into their plan. So we're working closely with them on that as well. But the green communities effort has led to a lot of those discussions about the building side of it.
Right, and so over the next 5-year plan, the only building slated for electrification at this time is Woodville. It's really the only building that's undergoing like that level of kind of heating and cooling system replacement. So that's the trigger for that kind of discussion.
Mm-hmm. And again, so we're well suited for that one because of the Wallace circuit and part of our future plan for the whole energy park. So that'll tie right into that effort.
I had some of it ties into this, some of it is just kind of a potpourri of things. I know when did we have the update around our back-end billing system, online billing system was going to be having a significant change that was going to require folks to have to recreate accounts. When is that coming? Is that still coming?
It'll fall timeframe. Is that, I think that's the last we talked
Yeah,
about. It was
it's
this
been going
fall.
slower than we had hoped.
Yeah.
But
Totally get how some of those projects go, so.
yeah,
Then, and I know we hadn't talked about it in a while, the pilot on the pole top solar.
yeah, we haven't done much of anything else with that.
Okay.
We've been kind of knee deep in a lot of other stuff. so.
Yeah, no, I just, I didn't know if it didn't work out,
It hasn't produced a ton. I mean, it's a nice little extra, but it's probably not something we've had time to focus on. We're having more bang for our buck probably with helping with the water department roofs and
Yeah.
things like that. So
Totally makes sense. And then two more things. This was the question that I had posed to you and Mark, was it last month, month before, on whether or not we wanted to include within our rebates for the heat pump water heater, the solar assist heat pump water heating type system. I know that our rebate says Energy Star, but these have the European rating, which I believe is ACE. I don't know if there's something we wanted to include in our rebates as, same level. If someone was, doing a heat pump water heater, if they choose a solar assist heat pump water heater, if we would consider that as part of that category.
I think so. One of the things that will come up in probably the either October, November timeframe will be the review of the current energy efficiency rebate program. So I'll make sure Joe looks at that, and we can potentially include that in a proposal for a budget and an expansion of the program going into next year.
I think also in that same vein, just looking at induction stoves as well, as including those in, and then bringing, are there ones that we should be moving off as well?
Okay.
And then the last thing, just, and I don't know where it fits in, the agenda for discussion points, but challenges, you and your staff have that, the board can help out with. So just kind of things that we can help facilitate.
I appreciate that. Yeah. I mean, I think, it's a lot of this stuff is moving so fast and the supply chain is moving so slow that has been one of the challenges that Elton's raised. So I think that's true. So we'll just keep you as I think one of the good things that's happened over the past several years is kind of getting into this. I included like the high level stuff that we try to include in certain months. And I think, one of the things that's been really valuable is having senior staff present, at certain times, on these topics, and we could slot those questions in. I think it would be really helpful as those things come up that you're thinking of, like Tom, a perfect time to deal with them would be like when that topic is coming up. So I'll make sure that, like, for example, some of the IT stuff's on Jeff's agenda. I'm thinking we're gonna probably have the energy efficiency stuff will probably be in November, and either supply chain would be in September or October, and IT will be September or October. We'll work with Sarah and Jeff on when those are gonna slot in.
So one thing that I haven't heard that I'm interested in revisiting, and timing is kind of unclear, is we had that conversation about the grants for the pipeline replacement within the EJ portion of Wakefield. And I definitely want to come back, if and when we get some indication that we're going to get that grant funding, I do want to come back to the concept of, or discussion about, what if that alleviates, budget needs essentially by using an outside source of funding for something we might have paid for ourselves previously. Does that open up opportunities for us to help folks of lower incomes a bit more? So I want to come back to that at some point. And I think you mentioned that we might hear in the fall.
The applications, I think, are due by the 22nd. So the process will start then. Raven thinks we'll hear by the beginning of October. So, but she's been working heavily on the application. So.
Yep. Awesome. Yeah, so that, I mean, obviously that discussion would be contingent upon understanding whether we get the grant and what the scale of that grant would be.
Mhm.
So in terms of strategic planning, do we want to stick to like a February? I just want to kind of check in on what is a good timing in the course of the year, or a point at which it might be good to get back together and do a strategic planning session.
Honestly, right now, like maybe we start off the year with the January meeting. As we started to kind of settle into this more routine that we have, maybe we put it on the first meeting in January as the start of the year. We ended up having a special meeting because we crammed a lot of other things in, but maybe we make the topic of the January meeting in large part the strategic meeting. It can help talk about stuff coming up for the year as well as longer term strategic issues.
And maybe we, is January, is that the second week? Did we push that? I forget. I don't.
We have in the past, depending on when the holiday falls.
I'm just wondering, maybe we make January, either the second or even potentially the third week, not the first week. If we are going to have this, I like having the strategic meeting early in the year. I liked it in February, especially if January was packed with a lot of stuff and fell closer to the holiday. Not everyone is quite realigned to everything after the holiday break and stuff, but if it's the
So
second,
the regular meeting would be January 4th, so we could move it to January 11th.
yeah, that gives kind of everyone time to think about and for that. But yeah, I think it'd be great having the strategic meeting first thing in the year. Kind of gives us directionality for the year.
Like I said, it's very hard for us usually to have a lot of data ready for that first meeting anyway, because the year end, we're still in the middle of closeout. So it might be a good month to have the strategic, the major, I mean, there could be other update stuff, but the major focus of the meeting be a strategic session.
Yeah, I like that idea. And I also concur with the idea of giving a little bit of extra time to prepare, because I think we're all exhausted from the holiday and haven't probably had enough time to review all the materials. So
yeah. All right, so we'll target that first meeting in January as a strategic session and try to make it on January 11th.
okay, and we can have further discussion as to what that would be focused on as we get a little bit closer, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, any other topics that we've missed?
I asked maybe a couple of meetings ago, but is it time to revisit the in-person meeting possibility, or do we want to continue with remote?
So I thought we might consider it, but then we have 2 people already with COVID this month, so I don't think it's going away. But part of it will be dictated also by the fact that the law, the change that allowed these meetings in this format ends on July 15th. It ends at the end of this week. And both the House and the Senate have different versions of an extension to this. So we don't even really know what the extension of this provision would look like. I think this has been a very, useful format because it is easier for the public to get in. And from what I've heard about the latest variants of COVID, like sitting in a room is not always, we've had people, we have 2 people currently with COVID and 2 more.
I just had it
masks.
2 weeks ago.
Huh?
I just had it 2 weeks ago too.
Yeah, and we have 2 more people that are wearing masks right now because they live with people that just got it. So
Joe's entire family.
huh? Yeah, Joe
Joe's
went
entire
to a super
family.
spreader vacation. So
Family.
and so I think what we should probably do is I'll be in touch with Jen as it gets closer to September. We'll have a better feel for where the extension of the provision to even do it this way stands, and B, where the COVID numbers stand, and we can decide whether to have it in public or keep it in this format.
If we do go in person, I would like to see us, as a board, continue to have the Zoom at least available for the public to log in. So still having the Zoom session broadcast.
Yep. We have put that capability in the conference room now, so. But I think it'd probably be best to just kind of wait and see a little bit further until we have more information on both the extension of the provision as well as the current COVID numbers as we get closer. If that makes sense.
Makes sense to me that this new variant seems to be spreading, and we don't know how well the boosters and the vaccinations are going to protect us from it.
Yeah, and like I said, we were quiet for a little while, and then we've had an uptick within the the department in terms of. I think we've had 5 people over the past 4 weeks that have had it, so that's more than 10% of our workforce right there. So, but in any case.
Okay. Anything else on this topic? Okay, and is there an interest in going into executive session, I guess, to review I think the one thing is the pro forma for the energy park.
Is there any more? I mean, there's a lot of information there. It's very preliminary. I don't know if there's specific questions about it. If not, you can just digest it and we can, you could send an individual question if you wanted. Or, we'll keep you posted as it evolves. We'll hopefully know a little bit more about the battery portion over the next several weeks. And a lot of the other stuff is just very preliminary numbers at this point, so.
I have a question that I don't think needs to be dealt with in executive session, which is just, can you provide information on the number of hours that the generator would be running to receive this level of revenue?
Yeah, I think it was based on running up to about 100 hours if necessary.
Okay. Thank you.
Is part of that 100-hour calculation, is that, for, EP versus peak shaving, or is it all 100-hour?
It would be all in.
Okay.
It probably wouldn't exceed 100 hours. I think we based it on 100.
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, I have lots of questions, but I don't want us to go too long. I feel like 8:47 at night is not a good time to dive into a pro forma and try to dissect it all. Is it possible, Pete, for us to sit with this until September and then?
Yeah, again, there's nothing. This is just the preliminary first pass. We'll probably even have, if we know more by then, I'll send out another version of it before the September meeting, and we could take it out earlier in the agenda if you want. If we have an updated version of it by then based on, better numbers, again, it's a living document, so.
Yeah, I think I would prefer to do it next month or probably earlier on if we can, depending on what items we have to cover.
Jen, maybe we put executive session first, after, call to order, move into executive session, kind of like I think town council and school committee do it that way as well.
Yeah,
and then come out to a public meeting.
Yeah.
And I think what I'd like to do, with a little more planning, and I think this will help you as well, is have you just literally walk us through line by line. I think that is probably a good idea for this project.
Yeah. Sounds good.
Okay. Does anybody else have a question though that they want to go into executive session on about this tonight?
I do not.
None for me.
Yeah, no, nor I.
Okay. Are there any other items not anticipated by myself in the agenda? Not hearing any. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn if there is one.
I'll make that motion.
Do we have a second?
Second that.
Okay, Commissioner Betcher,
Aye.
Commissioner Corsi. Up, not here. Commissioner Calais, aye. Commissioner Prifty,
Aye.
Commissioner Warshall.
Aye.
Motion is
Thank you.
approved 4-0 with Commissioner Corsi abstaining.
Thank
All right.
you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you
Have a good
very
night.
Bye.
much.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Good
Good
night.
night.
Aye.